Good evening from New York. I'm Lawrence O'Donnell. A day after Vice President Biden met with House Democrats to rally support for the president's tax compromise, the House Democratic Caucus voted to reject it today in a non-binding resolution that will probably not slow down the legislation's eventual path to the House floor. Congresswoman Shelley Berkley said she was the only Democrat in the caucus who voiced opposition to the resolution to reject the president's tax compromise framework.
If it passes the Senate, and this is the compromise that the President of the United States has committed to, what are we going to do in the House? Hold this up? Then what about all these people that I represent? Almost 20% of the people I represent are not working. What are they going to do to put food on the table for their kids? I mean, I think we have to start talking practically. And again, if we had a whole lot more time and we had a chance of changing this and making some adjustments, that's great. But I think it's going to come to the House the way it comes out of the Senate, and if that's the case, I'm voting for it, and I didn't want to be bound by a resolution.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi issued a statement saying the House Democrats will continue to work with the president and Republicans to improve the legislation before it comes up for a vote. Joining me now, former presidential candidate Ralph Nader, author of Only the Super Rich Can Save Us, Jane Hamsher, founder of FireDogLake.com, Rabbi Michael Lerner, editor of Tikkun, and Congressman Alan Grayson. Last but not least, Congressman Alan Grayson, and I want us all to pause here for a point of personal privilege for me. It is an honor that Alan Grayson would grace this show again tonight after I was inexcusably rude to him in this panel discussion last night. He accepted my apology graciously today on the phone, and he is gracious enough to rejoin us tonight. So don't be surprised, everybody, if Alan Grayson gets some extra time here tonight. Congressman Grayson, let's start with you. What do you say to Shelley Berkley, that lone voice who stood up in the caucus and said, in effect, this seems like the best we can do, and we absolutely can't allow those rates to go back up on people on January 1st, the people below the top tax bracket, which is what she's worried about. And she has the feeling that President Obama did her best, and we don't really have much time left to do much to change this.
Well, it's very simple. The president was elected on the platform of yes, we can, not no, we can't. We're going to have to find a way to do better because that's what America expects of us and that's what America deserves. We elected President Obama to be our commander-in-chief of the people in this country with a conscience, to go into battle for us and to win for us, not to be the capitulator-in-chief and negotiate the terms of our surrender.
Jane Hamsher, do you see strategically a road from here between now and December 31st where something significant could be achieved in changing the deal and yet still finding 60 votes in the Senate to pass the deal?
Well, that is the quandary. I mean, you've got members of the House who are absolutely firmly committed to getting a change in the estate tax, possibly in the Buy America Bonds Act that is expected to expire on December 31st that they haven't addressed. And they're really, committed to that change. But if they make that change, then it may explode everything in the Senate. They've been, because of the way the president sort of drop this on everybody, they've been furiously trying to buy votes with things like Harry Reid's, poker legalization, an extension of the ethanol subsidy to the oil companies. It's worth somewhere between $21 and $31 billion over the next 4 years. And those things are having to be given away in exchange for Senate votes. And so if the House comes in with a bunch of things that they need, it could blow up the Senate deal.
Ralph Nader, you've watched more of these struggles on Capitol Hill than any of us. What do you make of this one?
Well, we've seen this before. You remember the Democrats rejected George Bush's first $700 billion bailout, and just a couple days later they passed it with minor changes. I think the Democrats in the House feel they've been betrayed. They want to show a little temporary spine, but they're not supported by a transformational leader reflecting the majority that the Democrats have in the House and Senate. I've never seen a president so unwilling to tell the American people over the last 2 years that the Democrats are the majority and they're going to break the will of the Republican minority indentured to corporate power who thinks that they can rule as if they're a majority. And so what I think in this late hour, and it's always a late hour when it's easy to concede and surrender because the time is almost up, as Obama can say, December 31st. He should have started this a year or more ago, but he didn't. But now he can break this up. If the Democrats break this package up in pieces, make the Republicans start filibustering a few hours so they can show their fangs and their cruelty on things like only a 13-month extension for unemployment benefits, but a 24-month extension of tax cuts for the super rich, he would develop the kind of swell that would give him time, even if he has to go to December 31st. But he's not a fighter. He's conflict averse. He doesn't like to take on corporate power, and he takes his base for granted, mainly lower income people and labor and other constituencies that made him president. That is not a trustworthy president when you turn your back on the people who brought you there and continue to cater to the most craven Republican Party and its corporate paymasters in American history.
Michael Lerner, haven't the Republicans already shown enough of their fangs, as Ralph puts it, on their willingness to absolutely block any extension of unemployment benefits and to very, very faithfully tie themselves to the top tax bracket, as there's nothing more important in American government than that top tax bracket stay low? Is there any device left, if they were shameable on this, that could possibly shame them?
It's not an issue of shaming. The president has the veto. The president should have and still can announce that he will veto any piece of legislation that includes the blessings to billionaires and the giving away to billionaires of these tax benefits that could be well used to help reduce the suffering of many Americans through a massive employment program and through many other programs to help. So he has the power to do it. All he has to do is to announce that he's going to veto any legislation and let the Republicans take the rap for not having allowed a piece of legislation to go through that would reduce the taxes on everyone else but the billionaires.
All right, I want to get back to Congressman Grayson, but first let's listen to what the president had to say about this today.
There's an important debate, I think most of you are aware of, on Capitol Hill that will determine in part whether our economy moves forward or backward. The bipartisan framework that we've forged on taxes will not only protect working Americans from seeing a major tax increase on January 1st, it will provide businesses incentives to invest, grow, and hire. And every economist that I've talked to or that I've read over the last couple of days acknowledges that this agreement would boost economic growth in the coming years and has the potential to create millions of jobs. But if this framework fails, the reverse is true. Americans would see it in smaller paychecks. That would have the effect of fewer jobs.
Congressman Grayson, I think it's clear that the president is saying that if this framework fails, then we could, as Larry Summers has said, go into a double-dip recession. But your point last night is if this framework fails, there is still some time on the legislative clock to try another framework. What do you think the prospects might be, having been in all these caucus meetings in the House and knowing what you know, being on scene on the Hill? What do you think the prospects are for significant enough change in the bill here that it can get through the House, not necessarily with your support, but with enough Democratic support that it could also then get through the Senate with 60 votes?
Well, it's going to have to be substantial changes. What the president has done is to tout an agreement. Well, you can always reach an agreement when you give up, particularly when you're willing to give up a lot. And that's not what the American people need or deserve. There's going to have to be substantial change to get to an agreement. But this deadline that we've been talking about is an artificial deadline. We change taxes retroactively all the time. The president can direct the IRS to keep withholding rates exactly where they are so that nobody is hit by higher rates as of January 1st. And we need to work together to do this in some normal, professional manner. It's interesting that the particular clause that you and I discussed on the air last night is one that hasn't even been reduced to writing yet. This clause that would give out $150 billion to corporations, which, by the way, would be enough to hire 5 million Americans, reduce the unemployment rate by 3%. and give them all paychecks of $30,000 a year. When you're handing out $150 billion, you at least need to see the work. You need to see what the document says. They keep telling us all the time, read the bill, read the bill. There's no bill to read. There's been no hearings held. There's been no markups. There's been no analysis by the Joint Tax Committee. They just simply throw out this framework and say, take it or leave it. You know, this is legislative malpractice.
Not the first time.
To go ahead and spend $1 trillion this way just because the president reached some kind of agreement with his arch nemesis, Mitch McConnell, and left the rest of us all out.
As Ralph can tell you, it's not the first time tax bills have been legislated like this at the last minute. Ralph Nader, you seem to be doubtful that everything we're hearing from the Democratic caucus is going to amount to actual effective opposition that could sidetrack this thing. You seem to be saying that they have made these kinds of noises in the past about this and other bills in this Congress and in previous Congresses, but when it comes right down to it, in the end, the Congress gets in line and business as usual proceeds. Is that what you're predicting is going to happen here?
Yes, unfortunately. You see, the good Democrats in the House, for example, are up against a coalition of President Obama and the Republicans and the Blue Dogs. And the same is true in the Senate. That's hard to beat. Obama has dug his heels in the ground. He's not about to reverse and say, okay, I'm going to respond to the best elements of my party. It is true there are some inequities here that I went too far in supporting with the Republicans, and I'm going to go out and mobilize the country and the public sentiment, as Abraham Lincoln said. With the public sentiment, you can do a lot. He doesn't do that. He's dug in inside this beltway, inside the very bubble that he said he would never be in, and now he's going to have a hard time changing course. And the only way you can make him change course is to begin a rumble from around the country. That's what made Nixon. That's what made Nixon sign so many of the good bills, EPA and OSHA and product safety. He was afraid of the rumble around the country. You listen to the congressional debate. Very few people on either side will appeal to the American people to create a rumble on Capitol Hill from all the districts around the country. It's like Obama's been totally spooked by this so-called Tea Party thing and by the elections. And he's still president. He still has a Democratic majority. Use the power. But he is temperamentally conflict-averse when it comes to really fighting it. He's never broken the will of the minority Republican Party on a major issue since he became president. And I mean saying to the Republicans, here's what I want through Congress, Lyndon Johnson way, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose the whole thing.
Yes,
and he's never done that.
All right, everybody hold your reactions to that just for a moment. Our panel's going to stay with us for more of this after the break.